Come here. Look at the camera.
She doesn't even know to look.
Nice.
Nice. Okay, so she's with us.
We have 3 cats. This one is our maybe least intelligent cat, but incredibly sweet and definitely our fluffiest. So
That is for sure.
would you like some wine?
She's too young. If Chevelle could ask a question, what do you think she would ask?
She doesn't wonder anything. She just acts.
You think she's full of answers and not questions?
No.
Do you remember her stick from this morning?
Yes. Actually, this will come up later.
Okay, the stick will?
The stick will come up later.
Okay.
All right, are you ready to get into it?
I am.
Let's get into it. I'll go for you first because
Okay.
I have one more.
Okay.
I think so. We can begin and end with questions for Emily. So here's how this is going to work. So, your questions were submitted by our Instagram followers for the publication, and that means ultimately for me.
Right.
These were collected, put onto this beautiful notepad, and are now being presented to me for answering. My questions were written by me for you. So I'm going to begin with my first question. I have themed a few of these questions. It's March. You know what month that is.
Pisces season.
And
NBA.
no, that's college basketball you're thinking of.
Okay.
You want to give it one more guess?
My birthday?
Whose history month is it?
Women.
That's right. And so I have a few women-style questions in here. Yeah.
Name a woman.
That's one of them later.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so here's my first one, and it's in that fashion. Emily, the praying mantis is the famous bug with one of the craziest mating rituals. While mating, the female eats the male's head.
Yes.
What is one bug you would eat?
Oh. I thought this was maybe going to be true or false. And I was going to say
No.
true. A bug I would eat. Okay, I would eat one of, in The Lion King, when
Yes.
they lift up and they eat the grubs.
Of course.
I'd eat a grub.
A cartoon bug.
I would eat a cartoon bug because I used to actually pretend every time I was eating mandarin oranges as a kid, I would pick them up and I would eat it like a grub and I'd say, slimy, yet satisfying, which is, I think, what they say in the movie. Maxwell,
Yes.
do you have any advice for someone new to submitting?
Yes. I'm sure that I do. I would say, first of all, there's like a million journals out there, and so some of them you may really like, and some of them you may not like. Only submit to ones that you like. Don't waste your time just trying to get something out there. Get one into a place where you would feel proud to have your work presented. So that's definitely one thing. The other thing is to just really be careful about reading the submission guidelines to make sure that you are sending the people something that they actually want to read. And then I guess the last one would be read the other things on there. Like, I feel like even already having just opened up our second submission cycle, I can tell the people we've gotten some submissions that I'm like, if you had kind of read our first issue, you would know this isn't really what we're looking for. Because you can get something from the submission guidelines for sure, but not the full story necessarily. So whenever I've submitted anywhere, I've gone and read a couple pieces, or usually at least 3 pieces, I would say, in the category that you're looking to submit, usually the most recent 3, if you don't already know.
Yeah, so that must have, for the first issue, that must have made it, almost more challenging for the people submitting because there wasn't anything to look at. They had the guidelines,
Sure,
obviously,
yeah.
but, in terms of figuring out what you were looking for.
Definitely, and especially because, we wanted to cast kind of a wide net because we were unknown, and so even our guidelines were pretty loose, like we said, this is what we're looking for, this is kind of our values with writing and with photography, and what we kind of like, but we kind of also said, but send us anything that you
That's
think
true.
that you think that we would like, just based off of our Instagram posts, our social media presence, the way our website looks. If you think it would go well here, send it. And because of that, we probably got a lot more stuff in that first one, maybe than we'll even get for this one, to be honest, because we've really narrowed it in scope. So even though we now have a larger following, I'm kind of anticipating having maybe an equal amount, despite having more of a following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So also, like, when you said submit to places that you like, how do you, like, is that just based on, like, things like reading ones that you like to read, or what do you mean?
Yeah. Yes, that is what I
Yeah.
mean. And, like, I never like it when somebody who is kind of in this to be published is not also in it to consume it, I guess.
Sure.
And I think there's a fair amount of that. People who don't read these little online journals but see them kind of as a stepping stone to something, but don't really appreciate them for what they are. There are a lot that like I like and kind of keep up with a little bit, always crashing. The Rupture, which used to be the Collages, which I know you've probably heard me talk about a lot, is a great one. These are some free shouts out, I guess. A Velvet Giant, which I was fortunate enough to be in, too. I liked that one when it came out, prior to my piece getting in there. And so, yeah, if you are kind of looking for a journal just to sort of serve your purposes instead of being like, oh, this would be cool to have my work among the other work in here, and I kind of appreciate what this journal is doing, then I just don't love that approach.
I mean, I imagine, and like this is, I'm always an outsider on this, but I imagine you would have a lot less success if you're just like almost like going in blind, like just looking for journals to publish in instead of like being aware of the journals you like and trying to appeal to those.
Definitely. And I think that when you find something that will fit your writing, it's usually because you like the stuff that's
Sure.
in there, because people tend to write what they like to read. And so, I've found journals through looking for places to submit. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, don't go and Google like where accepts prose poetry, because you'll find places that accept prose poetry. You'll read some of their stories and you'll be like, oh, this one's awesome. I've read some websites that I'm like, I don't want my work in here. I don't like this. Like, I don't want my piece next to that piece. I don't like the way that they format certain things, or I don't like the way that my work would be presented were it to be in here. That's not an email that I would get back if it were a reception that I would be like, yes, and that's always how you should feel. And if your, output is great, then I think that you should kind of, it's always very fortunate for a writer to get accepted somewhere. There are so many more writers than publishers, even though there are a lot of publishers. But at the same time, you always want to feel very happy to have been accepted by this place specifically. And if you don't know journals, just Google it. Like, people will put together really good lists of whatever your niche is. It's kind of interesting. You would think, I know the review. I used to go to that a lot, and it has a breakdown of a lot of different journals and what they publish, and you can sort by, publishes poetry, publishes fiction, publishes flash fiction, and they'll have little write-ups of different journals and what they do. So that's a great way to find different journals. And then other places will just be like, when I was doing, because I do experimental stuff, so it's a smaller market a lot of the time. And so for those people, it's fortunate because people have compiled lists of like, here's 20 journals that do it. And then you go through and you read them and you're like, I really like 5 of these. Bam, you've got five journals,
Yeah, and that's a lot to submit to at once.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And, picking pieces that are really tailored to these places.
Sure.
Like, I know the shotgun approach can work fairly well because you're upping your chances every time. But, I just sent out some pieces, and I sent one to one journal, a different one to a different journal, and a different one to 2 other journals. And so that's 4 journals, but 3 different pieces went down because I was like, I think they'll like this one, I think they'll like that one, I think they'll like that one. And to be honest, one of them accepted 3 submissions, so I could have sent them all to them, but I was like, I don't feel like, I think all of these pieces are strong, but this one is very strong for this journal, and I don't want to water it down with 2 pieces that I don't think will go along with their other stuff. So, yeah. Great first question. Got a
Yeah,
lot, yeah, out of me there. Cool. All right, you ready for your
I
next
am.
question? Okay. You have mentioned in the past that you would like to combine fiber arts and therapy. How do you envision this working?
I think, you know, a lot of people anecdotally have said that learning a fiber art, I hear a lot about crochet because like that's what I'm really interested in the community I'm in online.
Yeah.
But also like embroidery, cross stitch, other like knitting, obviously, like people saying that like it is therapeutic for them.
Right.
And so I think it would be really cool to incorporate it in a sense of like almost like it could be like I'm actually coming up with this right now. Like it could be kind of like a group setting. So group therapies sometimes are like what you see in TV where it's like everyone's sitting around being like, "And how did you feel when they said that?" Like
Yeah.
very like in the room
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
immediate. But a lot of group therapy can also be skills based. And I think it would be interesting to do like a group for people that were interested in finding like tangible coping skills,
Mm-hmm.
tangible ways to self soothe, like through fiber arts. That could be community building for people once, maybe they are practicing some frustration tolerance if it's difficult at
Sure.
first.
Yeah, that was my kind of my a second part to that question almost is what do you think it is about that you say you hear people saying it's therapeutic to me. What do you think it is about that specifically that's
Yeah.
therapeutic? I mean, the thing that would spring to my mind is that it's kind of like inherently meditative,
Yes.
right?
That's what I would say. Like, one thing that all of these different forms have in common is they're repetitive.
Mm,
And so it's calming in a way because it's the same motion over and over,
right.
like crochet, cross stitch, like it's all, you're just doing the same thing with your hands. Something else that I think is therapeutic about it is it engages multiple senses. So obviously touch is a big
Sure.
part of it, but also like you're looking, right?
Yeah.
So it also kind of engages your mind in a way.
Right.
So it's like I've been crocheting for a long time, so I can multitask. Like I can watch something in crochet. I can even make eye contact with someone in
Sure.
crochet. Um, but sometimes I still have to pay just attention to that if it's like a complicated stitch or like I'm starting a new row or I need to count. And so it really does encourage mindfulness too. Like you really have to be kind of present with the work that you're doing.
Sure.
So I think it's slow. It's like a much slower hobby than I think a lot of things are.
Right.
Like um into this day and age,
Yeah.
Um it engages multiple senses and I think there is an element too of like you're making something cozy.
Yeah, that's very true. It definitely has sort of an air of nostalgia and a different time that was slower, and it
Yeah.
almost connects you to that idea of the world. I think that's super cool. You talking about it kind of engaging your brain, and then also I think all the time whenever I've tried to do any sort of mindfulness exercise or meditation or anything like that, there's always kind of a tricky element of letting your mind wander, but not not fixate on anything. But if it does, then let it happen, and it can be a tricky push and pull
Yeah.
with allowing yourself to just think your thoughts. And I feel like having sort of that grounding element of like
Yes.
physical, tactile something, and then whatever goes on in the background can go on. Yeah,
Absolutely. Grounding is a really great word for it too. It is grounding. And I think one last piece too is like one skill that I work on with clients, it's just doing one thing in the moment.
yeah,
And that's a distress tolerance skill. It's like when you're feeling overwhelmed with emotion, try just doing one thing. And I think like nowadays, like a lot of times we're doing two things at once. Like it's like I'm watching a movie, but I'm also scrolling, or
sure,
I'm
yeah,
listening to music while I'm playing my video game. I mean, we love to listen
sure,
to a
yeah,
podcast and
yeah.
game.
But that's not our meditative
Yes,
exercise.
exactly.
Yeah,
And so I think like this can also be a way to practice just doing one thing in the moment
yeah.
too, because it really does require your attention.
Very cool, lovely.
Thank you. That was such a good question.
Thank you.
I also feel like I haven't talked about that in a while, and so it's like I don't know. You
I listen.
you listen. Oh, do you accept double exposure photography?
Yes. We haven't received any. We received
Yeah.
none. Yes, I will say with the caveat, and I know this kind of comes down to um, just trusting the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not accept any double exposure photography that was made post photographs being taken. So I don't want two
Oh.
photos that were taken and then plugged into Photoshop or Lightroom or something and layered over each other.
Yeah.
I would want even digital. If it's digital, I want confirmation from the photographer that it was captured in camera. Yes.
How do you do double exposure digitally?
There are settings. Cameras have settings. They're like,
Oh,
okay, we'll capture
okay.
the first amount of light, and then we'll capture the second amount of light in a
Interesting.
very similar way. But I love double exposure photography. You know
Yeah.
that I love double
Your
exposure.
double exposures are some of my favorites of yours.
Thank you. And mine are all on film. My digital camera doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have the ability to do them. And I don't really like layering them because it almost gives you too much freedom in post, and it just feels like an editing job more than it
Yeah.
feels like a framing and kind of a, in the moment being inspired by two things you see or having. I love the idea of having to like hold an image on your camera and like, I can't take another picture until I find something to
Yeah.
pair with this picture.
I mean, we've walked around because, Maxwell and I, we've gone on many a like photo walk, like a film photography
Yeah.
walk. And there have been many times where it's like you taking the first half of double exposure and then you're walking around like, what's going to look good with those vines?
Yeah, totally,
you know?
absolutely. And I mean, an example for anybody who wants to see one is
The haiku post.
the haiku post. Is
Mhm.
that's a caught, like that's an on film double exposure, like
Yeah.
in camera, of our friend's dog and some plants that we passed by, of Brandon,
Brandon!
very sweet dog, and some plants that we passed by. And that one really pops. That whole roll was
Yeah,
awesome.
that was,
Actually, I
you
think
did
of
a
that
lot
roll
of
all
double
the time.
exposures, and there's some that
The swan one.
Yeah,
That'll
that
probably
one
make it
stands
on
out.
onto our site or something at some
maybe
point. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so yes, we definitely do. So long as it was captured in
Yeah.
camera, and I would, if anybody submitted one and I really liked it, if it's on film, I know the score. If it's
True.
digital, I would probably reach out
Yeah.
and just ask for confirmation that it was captured in camera. Or if you're seeing this now and you do double exposure, just specify that it was captured in camera. I would appreciate that. So
Cool.
yeah, definitely good question. Okay, Emily. Kendrick Lamar recently made headlines when he bested fellow rapper Drake in a battle of songs. What is one song you would sing to make Drake feel better?
Oh. First of all, I loved the way you phrased this. He did
Thank
best
you.
him in a battle of songs.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd sing to him the song. It's like, "Hey, why you look so sad? The tears are in your eyes. Come on and talk to me now." You know the
Yeah,
one, the
beautiful.
Carrie Underwood
Mhm.
song.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because
You
it's
want Drake to talk to you now.
No. Okay. Maxwell, what made you want to start this?
That is a good question. It's a little bit broad because so many things. I would say the three art forms that we feature are all things that I love, and so I wanted to interact with them more. I would say that is probably my biggest. The most I could distill it down into a single answer is I wanted to interact with the stuff that I love more.
Yeah.
I also am. I wanted to be engaged in a project that I cared about because I've worked jobs. I've worked at a law firm most recently. I've worked at bars. I've worked in an underwriting department, and I've tried a lot of different kind of career things. I've tried, just writing stuff while I'm working odd jobs somewhere, and nothing has ever felt quite so fulfilling. Mm-hmm. And whatever I'm working on typically becomes the thing that I think about the most. Like if be it working behind a bar, pouring people beers or wines or making drinks or whatever, then I go home and I kind of think about restocking the fridge the next day. It's just the way I work. I wish I could disconnect, but I can't. And so for me, if that is replaced by constant focus on poetry, on photography, mm-hmm. on fiction, and that's what I'm surrounded by, and that's the world that I'm living in all the time, it's gonna manifest in my hobbies. Like I'm gonna want to write more. I'm gonna want to take more pictures. And so, it's self-serving in a way because it allows me to engage with what I love, and engage with other people. But at the same time, I'm a very kind of morally driven person, passion driven person, and we say this in our like introduction to manifesto that I wrote, which is that there is a lot of mastery in art. And like I'm thinking about the Oscars this year, there were some movies nominated that like, brother, I was just thinking like, man, it felt kind of like if like Prisoners by Denis Villeneuve. I don't even know if that was up for any Oscars. I was like, if that came out last year, it would have like swept or something. You know what I mean? And so not to be too panicky about the deterioration of the arts in a commercial sense, but certainly kind of with the rise of Marvel and Disney and even the deterioration of those individual companies and those franchises, it kind of makes you go like, man, I wish I could see some stuff that used to hit me. I used to watch a movie and I would like really feel, and now I feel like I get one of those every couple of years that comes out, or read a book, or and so being like, I'm sure that people are making it, it's just I'm not seeing it. But the places that it's happening, they're just on a much smaller scale because it doesn't make money, and so I wanted to discover and display that art in a way that can let it get a little bit of traction, let people get their eyes on it. It's like maybe a little bit corny, but I do believe in it. So yeah. Who are your top 5 female artists right now? Now this can span anything.
Okay.
Right? This can be a director, an author, a musician, anything.
Okay.
This is my Women's History Month.
Nice. One. Okay. Right now, so it's probably going to be mostly authors and musicians because I don't really know directors like you do.
I was just giving that as an example. Okay. It could be any artist.
Yeah. Okay. First, shout out to who I think might be my favorite author, Susan Fletcher, author of Korag, one of my favorite books. I really like her stuff. I'm always on my Mitski grind, of
You
course.
don't even laugh that one off.
I love Mitski.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really amazing music and lyrics and makes me feel so many things. I have, of course, also been in my Chapel Roan era, so I don't think we can leave that out, especially like, part of the queer community too. I think everyone's happy.
It's a moment.
It's a moment. It's a
cool.
moment, and it's fun.
It's irreverent and fun.
It's fun to enjoy things.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah.
Just like,
not everything that gets big. It's few and far between.
Yeah.
I think that like something gets huge, but freaking, I loved Oppenheimer. It was awesome. I was so happy that it made like $1 billion. I was like, it felt great that it was successful.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I follow so many like talented crochet artists.
Yeah.
Too,
I was wondering. I was curious if there's like anybody who's big in your community that.
There's a couple I'm thinking of. One in particular, I think it's Destiny Makes, and she does these really cool tapestry crochets that I think are really inspiring.
I remember you used to be into that one too that made like the billowy.
Shimunia, I think is her name. She would do embroidery work that was really cool, but I feel like she's not really active anymore. But I was very into her.
She might be like you. She might be very active but not posting.
That's true. Yeah. And then the last spot, I'm tempted to go for this author that I've been reading recently that I've been really enjoying, Jacqueline Carey.
Cool.
She wrote the Kushiel's Legacy series, and I'm 2 of 3 books in and have really been enjoying that.
That's the one you're in right now? That's that author?
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Very, like, heavy on the world building, but it's a really cool and, like, unique world that's not too different from our own, but, like, still very interesting. So I've been really enjoying her stuff as well.
Nice. Great. Yeah. That's 5 great picks and all over the map, which is awesome.
Okay, Maxwell.
Yes, hit me.
How do you think that typesetting and design impact the way we read?
That is an excellent question. I actually did see this one because it is from our mutual friend Hadley.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
who is more proficient in these areas than I am,
Hmm.
but I do all of that for us, and uh, I think more monumentally than any writer would like to admit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe even more than any reader would like to admit, because you like to think that the work is the work. At the end of the day, if I read a book in any format and it's like really phenomenal, but I definitely think that, especially in terms of giving a piece a chance, or a publication a chance, or a book a chance, there are certain things that are communicated through uh, different stylings, different spacings, especially with, just our kind of preconceived conceptions of what. Actually, do you mind? I might even pause it and cut because I want to grab a couple books real quick to kind of show what I'm
Okay.
talking about. Is that all right?
Yeah. I'd eat this bug. And action.
So Emily did point out that I should maybe give a quick definition of
Mm.
typesetting. And when Hadley refers to typesetting in design, what she means is the way that the letters and are formatted on the
On the
page,
page.
basically. Yeah,
So,
font, spacing,
yes, okay.
yeah, and kind of organization
Okay.
of a page. Yes,
So, you remember the wine glass poem?
yes.
Is that, would you say,
No,
um,
no. I would say that that is.
you
Oh,
didn't let me
sorry.
finish.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Would you say it's a masterful example of typesetting?
No.
Okay.
Um, because the typesetting, the author will write something. My work, that is formatting on their part, essentially, or structuring, if you want to call it that. Um, there is an element of, shaping something to it,
Hmm.
but a typesetter doesn't really care about what the content of it is. So that's the font. That's how far this line is from this line. That's how
Okay.
far the margins on the side of the pages are.
Yeah.
Um, all of that's
So,
typesetting. So it's kind of like,
yeah.
how does that affect the way that we interpret something? So in poetry, there's something called lineation, which is really
Hmm.
what that is, which is, where do you make a line break? How does that shape the poem? When your eyes have to move from here to here, what effect does that give? Because this feels further from that, and it makes it feel distant, and it also makes you read it kind of at a weird pace or something, and that can have a really great effect on poetry, and make a poem read completely differently if you read it with two different. Hey, Jelly Bean, say goodbye, Jelly Bean, and reaction.
Yes.
Uh, so that's lineation. That's an
Yeah.
author's decision, and a typesetter, or like myself, like I have to respect that when
Hmm.
I'm actually putting the stuff out to be published and
Yeah.
choosing the font for it, right? Like, I think of, there was even one photographer who, all of his titles were lowercase italicized, and that's the way
Hmm.
he likes his stuff. And when I publish his stuff, I put his titles that way on our
Yeah.
page because that's the way he likes them. Now, I will say our headings, I like to keep cohesive, right? And I'm my publication, and I want everything to feel cohesive. So his heading, I didn't do that with, even though that's what he wanted. But that's kind of like a balance that you have to strike with the art itself and then the
Hmm.
publication, and how
Okay.
it is best presented. So, but kind of to go back to the original question of how does typesetting
Hmm.
affect something, I did grab these two things as sort of examples. I think I was talking a little bit about association before, so you see this here. I'll hold this up to the camera. This is a regular looking book here. This is a Paul Auster novel. He's one of my favorites, just passed, R.I.P. And this is a regular kind of normal looking.
Yeah.
This is a serif font. Those are when you get those, extra little bits on the ends. Times New
Okay.
Roman is a serif font.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so this kind of says this is a sort of traditional book. That's what it communicates to me. No bells and whistles. Paul Auster is no bells and look at how few paragraph breaks there are. This
Yeah.
dude is about the words here, right? Like, he's just, it's the writing. You're in
Yeah.
his world. There's not a whole lot of framing to it, but it feels at the same time very traditional.
Yeah.
So it kind of puts that into your brain when you go into reading a book. I mean, design, sort of the same thing. Like, not a lot of bells and whistles here.
Hmm.
It looks nice. I like this cover a lot. It's very simple. I like the colors, everything. But it just says this is
Yeah.
just a book by
classic old book.
A classic old book, like a good book, but a classic old book. It's not cramped. It's not under cramped. So, and I think of like the pulp novels that I like too. Like when I pick up a Raymond Chandler or something like, or a Dashiell Hammett book. I kind of like those to be those chunky little small like
the chunky
things.
kind of small paperbacks.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're old because they don't really make them like that anymore. So they all like, you picture them having a sort of distressed look to them. Like,
absolutely. Like this is meant to be read over and over. It's meant to have the spine correct, and those almost say easy reading to me a lot of the time. Like they're very common of genre and crime and those sort of novels, and so.
How I first read Stephen King.
Oh, really?
And
That's
so
funny.
I have that association.
Association. I mean, that is a big part of it. And then, this is one that I grabbed, and this is one I got on our Kentucky trip. Yeah. This is a kind of sort of experimental, pretty artsy book called Obit by Victoria Chang. And it says poems on the front. They read like they're prose poetry, but if you look at this, there are all these little pillars, and they're written like obituaries in a newspaper. So they do evoke that feeling, and it is newspaper font, but it's also, I mean, if you look at this is a sans serif font. So what sans serif means, I know.
No bits.
No extra little lines on the, here, let me get it in focus here. No extra little lines on the top and bottom of the letters. It's very kind of sparse, and it feels very modern. It almost feels like a computer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so this is a very fresh, interesting, like modern looking and feeling book. It's not traditional. It's untraditional. And so it evokes that feeling with the font that they've chosen. So I have a mixture, I think, on ours. I have a little bit that feels kind of antiquated. I like to make our stuff feel fresh, so all of the body text on our site is a sans serif font. Something I've talked about with this project is not having a feeling of this sort of journal being a last bastion of these arts, right? Of film photography, or kind of more street level photography, artsy photography, of literary short stories, of poetry. I want it to feel vibrant and fresh and new and like with the times. And so I think when you read something in a font like that on a website, black background, white font, it feels updated, modern, fresh, current. But at the same time, using like a serif font or kind of something that feels a little bit more showy in a way.
Typewriter font.
I wouldn't use typewriter font, but yeah. That definitely evokes a feeling, and I actually find that a little bit corny. But no, like mine are like, kind of say, here's the title, it's cool, it's interesting, it's unique, it's us. Like, the font that we use for the title of each story is a part of a font package that I purchased that's less used, right? And then our main like head font, the Cinzel font, that's one that's fine, that's a common one. Very a little bit more traditional, a little bit newer, kind of in vogue, kind of not. And it doesn't say like we're trying to be so original. So it's the way that I interpret it.
A level of like neutrality almost, where it doesn't come off being super modern. It doesn't come off as being like extra ornate. Like it's just like it's almost neutral.
Definitely,
but slightly stylized.
It really is, Emily. I say this all the time to you when I'm like going between two things, and Emily, you'll say to me like, they look basically the same to me. And I'll always say this thing, which I really believe, which is people don't notice what they don't notice.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is it's so subconscious, the way that you interpret something. Like, nobody's ever reading something like, oh, this feels old to me, But it just is framed that way in your brain very subconsciously. And when you're doing typesetting or spacing, a certain amount of spacing might denote a certain level of importance. Or if you have stretched spacing in a book, it might kind of like say like, it might feel more childish or more serious the further or closer these words get from each other, right? And so, and like even like an Elmore Leonard novel, that's easy reading, but it's also very adult. So it's like almost like he has like a sort of moderate amount in there. So all of that stuff is just meant to complement the work and to frame it the way that you feel about the work, frame it that way. Something that I would say even that I do to writers is if you're struggling with a piece that you have and you're having difficulty kind of envisioning the end product, what I will actually do, I've done this multiple times before, is I will format it like it's a page on a book. Like imagine this as the end thing on the book. I put it in, I really like Merriweather, and there's another one that I really like that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. And I'll bring those margins in and I'll make it 1.5 or 1.2 or somewhere in there. Make it feel like a book, like how I would want the last thing to be.
Yeah.
And then type like that, you know, see that end product in your mind. And you feel like you're writing a book, not like you're writing a double space Times New Roman 12-point font or an Arial font.
It makes it feel
piece.
a little more real.
Definitely, yeah. So it's a little mind trick that you can do. I'm not a big fan of like mind tricks for yourself, but hey, it's worked before, so yeah.
You're talking about like the spacing and stuff and like how that could make it feel more adult or more childish. And I was reminded of this book I used to love as a kid called Music of Dolphins.
Yeah.
Did you read that?
No, but I remember that it was one of your favorite books as a kid.
And it does this thing where it's like, it's this girl that was like raised by dolphins. And so her English at the beginning is very broken and very simple, like a child, even though she's like older. And the font was like big and like big spaced out, and then she like kind of gets like reintroduced to society, and it becomes like smaller, more complete sentences, and then it becomes like super advanced and like italicized, right? But then she like goes back to the dolphins and it becomes like big again,
right?
And, that just reminded me, I guess that's maybe lineation, not typesetting, but it is design.
Well, no, I think it's probably both. That's like kind of a partnership there, because lineation is a poetry term for where you break and place the words, basically. And that's definitely, I'm sure the author had this formatting idea in their mind when they were writing it, but then you have to execute it when you actually print the book and find a way to make it work. I wrote a Golden Shovel poem, which you probably remember, which was right justified. So if you're looking at, I'm not sure if I'm mirrored here or not, I don't think I am. So if you're looking at the right side, everything reads downward, and the last word of each line spells out a sentence. But on this side here, it wasn't necessarily ragged, as they would call a non-justified edge of something, because every line was exactly one indentation length, shorter or longer. So it went shorter, an indented space, and then unindented, then indented, then unindented, but they all ended in exactly the same place, and they were more perfectly like this on this side. Now, I sat up at a coffee shop, and I spent like 8 hours changing letters, commas, everything, to make sure that it was just perfectly aligned on both of those lines, right? And the margins were, so it took a lot of kind of like manipulation, because I didn't want to sacrifice what I'm trying to say or any sort of effect that I had gained. And then I write it like this, and then I go to put it in my professor's format, and all of a sudden, I've changed fonts, and so now it doesn't line up perfectly.
Oh my gosh.
So if you're working with a typesetter, that would be something that you would need to communicate. Like, this is supposed to be clean here and clean here and clean here. And so pick a font, make little micro spaces somewhere if you need to make this all look like this.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like even in that Victoria Chang book, there was probably a bit of that, right? Like, you're deciding, making certain decisions like that to get the desired effect.
Because you want the effect without having to hyphenate a bunch of words.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You can't. I couldn't have even broken the lines in different places if I wanted to, because it's the Golden Shovel poem. So, Emily, what is your favorite story or poem in our inaugural issue?
Oh, I think my favorite is Interview with a Dead Vulture.
Nice. Yeah.
I really like that one.
The first one.
The first fiction piece. Yeah. I think it's funny. I think it's deep. I really like that one.
It is. That is an awesome piece. It's so funny because, and I would never like pick one. It's
right.
Like,
it's not cool for you to do. No, and it's fine for me.
It's crazy because I feel like every time I read anything in that first issue, I am like, damn, that was awesome.
It was awesome.
Like, it's
Everything was
awesome.
amazing. The poems are beautiful. Like, everything
Yeah.
was really good.
My brother Will texted me and kind of gave me his opinions on his favorites in there, and then said that he spent like 10 minutes looking at Andrew Michael Joseph's pictures.
Yeah.
That was 4 pictures. That's Andrew Michael Joseph. That is a great amount. That's 2.5 minutes per photo.
Yeah.
That's awesome,
Those
man.
photos
Like,
were beautiful.
yeah, they were awesome. And so you just never know. Different pieces will strike people in different ways.
Yeah. I
But
mean, I love this photo. I think it was his of the wall with the
Right,
sunlight
yeah.
on it. Such a simple composition, but to me, I'm like, that's beautiful.
it really
you know?
is. And that's when I loved the colors and everything at first,
Yeah.
and the shine on the wall. And, the first time I saw it with his, it like, things will hit you in different ways. Like, I had that image of that shopping cart
Yeah,
in my
like
mind.
you were like obsessed with that one.
I thought that was so cool. And Emily, before you even saw the shopping cart one, I don't know if you remember that we were driving and I looked and there was a shopping cart. Do you remember this? Out the
Yes.
window. And I was like, that reminds me of a photo that we had
I do
submitted.
remember
And I'm like,
that,
man,
yeah.
if that one's on my mind right now, if I'm still
Yeah.
just like thinking about those when I'm driving around doing errands,
Yeah.
like those are some special photos. But yeah, you were totally right, because when it came down to it, that photo of the wall, that's the thing that I ended our first issue with. I was like, that's a great capstone. It
Yeah.
feels like credits, but it
It
feels like
does.
credits that encapsulate everything here. Like,
Yeah.
just leaves you on this beautiful blank, just light and plants and beautiful. It's beautiful. But yeah, I thought that was super, super cool.
How do you source the photos for your Instagram/site? Would you consider taking subs for promo photos?
So the photos for, yes, are no.
No to submissions
No,
for those?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I have no shortage of them,
Yes.
because they're all mine.
Yes.
So that's like not something that I've like been like super public about, but all of the photos like that are being used for our Instagram things, like we're not like going to like Google or Canva and like looking like picture of plants on a wall or something.
Yeah.
Though I've taken all of those photos, all of the ones kind of paired with our photography and our fiction pieces too.
You mean
And-
poems? Paired with
yeah, sorry, yeah, paired with our poetry and our fiction pieces, are photos that I took, and then I have a years long backstock of those to select from that I feel fit really well with the
Yeah.
fiction piece. But those are for our online publication. I don't anticipate those ending up in the print publication. They're just meant for a nice formatting, and then the photos that we get right now for our main issues, those get their own gallery. The only time that a photo will be paired with text otherwise is going to be in the weekly features, and those are made very cognizantly, and those people know that they're getting paired up, and so we communicate with them. People have asked too, which I think is cool. They're like, oh, I got paired with a poem, I'd love to read it. And I trust our
Yeah.
accepted artists, so I'm like, here it is, like, check it out, it'll be published
That's really
next
cool.
month. And both times that's happened, the person's come back and been like, oh, I totally get why that was paired up. So
That's fun how much thought you put into it. I'm really excited to start seeing the weekly features.
they're awesome. That first one, man, is awesome. I won't say her last name on here, but Zoe, who submitted the first ones that are getting published, that stuff's so cool. Color flashes, that's so dope. I love her stuff.
Nice.
It's awesome. So yeah, looking forward to seeing more of her photography too, and other people that we've interacted with too. We've had a lot of really great conversations over email, especially by the time I get something and then it really hits me too. It's like when I am able to talk to a person, even if I say this isn't right at this point, just be like,
Yeah.
hey, this is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
we have one guy, I remember, that sent in something that was like, hey, like, I'm just throwing these out there, like, I'm kind of getting back into photography. I decided to send them in, and it was great. It wasn't right for our first issue. It wasn't really cohesive with the other stuff being published and kind of our aesthetic for for the inaugural issue. But the email I sent back was like, hey man, if this is just you dipping your toes back in, like, keep at it.
Yeah,
Because you're
totally.
killing it. Like,
Right.
I was like, we're this, I think it was in the snow and stuff, and I was like, we're the winter issue. I'd be like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we'll definitely,
It's not
it
right
would
for
definitely
right
be in a
now.
feature or something. But yeah.
Yeah.
So, those are really cool conversations that I've been
Nice.
able to have. I know that wasn't necessarily the question, but yes,
No, but
no, those are probably going to be just mine. And if I
yeah.
run out of them, that means I need to start taking more pictures again.
Yeah.
This morning, you woke me up using fear tactics. Does scaring innocent sleepers bring you a sick sense of joy?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I guess that answers that question.
That's not what happened.
That is what happened.
Okay. There was a stick on the bed.
I don't think I've had night terrors before.
You looked really scared, but
I've
it
never
wasn't
woke
my
up-
fault.
I've never woke up by slightly cracking my eyes and then immediately flinching really hard.
Well, I was holding a stick about this big, because there was a stick on the bed, which is a rare occurrence.
Well, I wear glasses, so for all I knew,
It was a gun.
It was a gun, it was a needle, or it could have been a way bigger stick.
It could have been a way bigger stick. So all that happened was that I happened to be holding a stick, standing over the bed and looking at Maxwell when he cracked his eyes open, and then he got really scared.
No. What happened was, you said, "What?" And I kind of woke up and cracked my eyes open, and then you were staring at me like this. And then I flinched because I was so scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got really scared.
I
But
got-
really, it was Chevelle's stick.
It was Chevelle's stick. Our cat Chevelle brought the stick into the room.
Yeah.
We surmised.
Hey, Maxwell.
Yeah.
Why aren't you on Submittable?
Why am I not unsubmittable?
Yeah.
That's a fair question. You don't
Well,
have to ask
I'm-
it like that.
You came at me, and so now I'm coming
Oh,
at
I
you.
see. Okay. It makes it seem like the person who submitted that was coming at me.
So why aren't you on Submittable?
This is a question I've received 3 times.
Wow,
Yes.
okay.
And it's a legitimate question because a lot of and for people who don't know, Submittable is a very common submission site for
Yeah.
or service for journals like ours, but it is a service, and so even though you have to go onto it and it's free for consumers to have an account, there is a cost for on our end to have an account, and I try and keep those at this if I can.
Well, we all know that from the episode you did with Emily Campbell. That
Yes, yeah. The cash flow is weak. It's better. It's better for sure
It's better.
with our orders
With
and our
our
patrons.
Patreon.
Oh, our Patreon. No, our Patreon's doing awesome. We're getting like
subscribe to the Patreon.
yeah, we're getting it's super helpful, and it's making me hopeful for a bigger print release, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So yes, legitimate thank you there. And the movie episodes have been really fun too.
Yeah,
so
those have been a
those
lot
are
of fun to
awesome.
do. So
Yeah, those are great, and we'll watch better movies coming up. But
hopefully, hey, no promises. We gotta find ones that are on YouTube.
yeah, no, there are some I think.
So Maxwell.
Yes,
Oh, I guess you did answer it.
I
Why?
did. Well, yeah, I'll give a little bit more of
Yeah.
a answer, saying that the 2 things that we get if we pay Submittable, is, well, I guess I'll say 3 things. Convenient for people who are already on Submittable. Submittable will kind of promote your stuff sometimes because you can search for people through Submittable. And then it's easier organizationally for a lot of journals because they can go and mark things as, received or in progress or accepted or declined. We have such a good back-end system right now with the way that we organize our drive and emails and everything, that I kind of developed expecting that we would not be getting Submittable or that we might be eventually getting Submittable.
Yeah.
That I don't find it necessary for us on the back end to use it. So we'd kind of be paying to do things in a different way than the way that we've developed. I'm not really interested in doing that. So organizationally, we're fine. We're getting as many submissions as we would currently like, and so
Yeah.
I don't really need them to promote us or us to be findable through Submittable. I know some other sites have already quickly put us on there and our guidelines and stuff on there, so people can find us on other sites. I don't know if you know that. You probably don't.
No.
Yeah, so there are places that catalog chill
Oh.
subs and things like that. So
Cool. Like the list you were talking about earlier. Like people are putting you on lists.
yeah, stuff like the review, and
Wow.
we're probably not on there yet because they
Yeah.
actually wait and actually read one of your things
Sure.
and review that issue. But
How cool.
yeah, so I've had multiple people tell us in their thing, like, found you on Chill Subs or found you over on this site, or, we had a guy email us to say, hey, I put everybody who does Flash on this one thing, and I just added you, and you're at the
Cool.
top of our list for the month because you're a new feature. And so, like,
Nice.
that kind of stuff just happens. And then our Instagram following's been so big, we get most people from there. So I we're at no shortage of submissions,
Yeah,
so we don't really
you
need
don't really
submittable.
need it right now.
The last one that I'll say is the other one being it's convenient for people who are on submittable, but the way you can submit to us is so easy because you just email us your stories as like a document, and we don't request a cover letter. We don't request an upfront author bio. People include them. They're helpful, especially on the back end if we accept something. In terms of like the author's names or anything about the author, I never read an author bio before I read the piece. I don't really, I don't, it doesn't matter that much to me if somebody's been published somewhere or not. And so, like, that's great to know on the back end. If I read a story, I love it, and then I'm like, who is this person? And I'm emailing them back, and I'm excited to talk to them. Then it really comes into play. But up front, and even if somebody types something in the body of their email, my eyes goes past it. I go link first, work first, and then let it hit me organically without knowing who this person is, and then find out about them. So, that's the last thing. We don't need anything special, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Please list these Andersons in order from most to least trustworthy.
Okay.
Anderson Cooper.
Okay.
Anderson Pock.
Okay.
Bubbling. One in the ham.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he has that awesome song with Bruno Mars, too. Yeah.
Smoking out the window. Okay, start over.
Okay, Anderson Cooper.
Okay.
Anderson Pock.
Okay.
Thomas Anderson, a.k.a. Neo from The Matrix.
Okay.
His in-Matrix name is Mr. Anderson.
Okay.
And Wes Anderson.
I don't know why I thought there was 5. Okay.
Yeah.
There's only 4?
I never specified how many there were.
Okay.
So, Anderson Cooper, Anderson Pock, Neo, or Wes Anderson. And Wes Anderson. Most to least trustworthy.
Most to least.
Yeah.
Okay. Is Anderson Cooper the one with like silver hair?
Yeah.
Or is he. Okay.
Yeah.
He's the one that doesn't get drunk at New Year's.
That's right. Famously.
It's kind of trustworthy behavior. So maybe I'll put him up by the top. Then I'm thinking working bottom up. I wouldn't really trust Neo.
Really?
I would, right?
What do you mean?
I don't know. Well, I'm thinking like, yeah, if I was also out of the Matrix, I would, he's trustworthy in the sense that if I was Trinity, he would try to save my life. But I probably live in the Matrix, and in that sense, he's lying to me all the time.
What are you talking? You've seen the Matrix? We watched the Matrix together.
Yeah.
He's not going around lying to everybody all the time.
He's
the primary truth seeker that's trying to free everybody from the prison of the Matrix.
Is he trying to free everyone?
Yeah.
Oh.
You're like fighting like the robots in the program and.
Okay. So then maybe he goes by the top. So I guess I'll put.
He's like Jesus, basically, of the Matrix. Yeah.
Okay. So.
Like almost pretty direct Messiah figure.
He's the one, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, probably a little bit more trustworthy
going
than
around
Anderson
lying
Cooper
to everybody in the Matrix all the time.
Well, like, he's not telling me that I'm in the Matrix. Okay. I'll put him at the top. He's a fictional character, which in a way makes him more trustworthy because he doesn't have the same flaws as us mortal men.
That's pretty fair. He is almost a fictionally pure character in many ways.
Okay, so I'll put him.
Okay.
And then maybe I'll say Anderson Paak because I trust him to bring me good vibes.
Okay.
And then Anderson Cooper. And then Wes Anderson, who I love his movies, but... No, actually, okay. You chose 4 trustworthy Andrews.
None of their names are Andrew.
What?
Zero Andrews.
What? Okay. So, anyways, I like his movies. But doesn't he have some connection with Noah Baumbach.
He does.
And I don't know anything about him except for that you really don't like his movies.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm putting Wes Anderson
If
at the
you
bottom.
want to make a movie where a man is awful to a woman in a really specific way, get Noah Baumbach to write it for you.
So yeah, so for that reason, I'll put Wes Anderson at the bottom, even though I really like his movies.
I think he's so playful and mischievous in a way.
Yeah.
In his filmmaking that I also maybe have him at the bottom. But I will also say Anderson Cooper is a Vanderbilt who works for like CNN.
That's true. I forgot he's a Vanderbilt. Yeah.
And he runs. I've seen a video actually of Anderson Cooper, and I'm not going to mess with your list. This is your list. But I will say I saw there's a video of Anderson Cooper and Stephen Colbert, and where they're obviously completely both fake crying about Anderson Cooper's you said, Stephen Colbert's experienced some real tragedy in his life. His dad and two brothers were killed in a plane crash when he was young.
God.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you said you were grateful for the hardships in life. And his question is that true? And Stephen Colbert goes, yes. And Anderson Cooper's like, and I'm just like, it's such bullshit, man.
Yeah.
I can't. It's I really want to like Stephen Colbert all the time, but he'll do something like that every once in a while, and I'm like, come on, man.
Sure. How early in reading something can you tell if it's publishable?
I saw this question in advance as well, and it's a very good question, and it is a question that is, I think probably a lot of people won't like to hear this, but a lot of the time, first sentence. Mm-hmm. Definitely first paragraph. And that doesn't mean I can tell whether I will publish it at all.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I'm going to stop reading it either. But in terms of just quality of writing, I can tell reading the first sentence a lot of the time whether that person's kind of got it by line work quality or not,
Well, I imagine a strong author can have a weak first paragraph, but
the writing in it, you can tell is good. Versus
for sure a not strong author.
Definitely. You can't hide from just the way that you write, and that's the thing is it's so not about the content. You can write about the content matters and elevates it, and that's going to be the differentiating thing at the end of the day a lot of the time, but I would encourage anybody to go read the I think it's the third, possibly sometimes in our first issue, and that's about a guy just throwing his limbs around, but the writing is so interesting, the language is so interesting, this character's obviously got some sort of thing going on that makes him interesting, and sympathetic, and just the kind of verbiage used and the phrasing and the way he stretches sentences and uses his commas and the pacing is all so great that the content is very obscured and it's not really a narrative at all, but the writing's so cool and interesting and stood out to me so much as this guy's writing, and he's killing it, and that means a lot more than a story where if I read something and it's the light peered through the blinds and hit him in the face and stuff. I'm all right, this person doesn't have that urgency, those sensibilities. I would say conciseness is something that is super lacking. You can have a concise, long story, a story that the lines themselves, there is nothing superfluous in there. The language used is necessary and evocative, but I've said this before about this idea of you can't teach urgency. Yeah. And it's either somebody, I think a lot of writers feel like they have to seem writerly. And I think that the writers that write a lot more matter-of-factly, you take on a very authoritative voice when you just write confidently and matter-of-factly. And if you're able to do that and have your language still be interesting, that's what makes a great writer. That's what makes a great writer.
Well, you know what they say about brevity.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Are you gonna...